Plan the greatest heist the galaxy has ever seen as you command a group of misfits and outlaws in, aptly named, Star Wars Outlaws. What's going on, everyone? This is Sergeant Sentinel with another video game review. And now this one is interesting because this game actually came out about a year and a half ago. And initially, whenever it first dropped, I didn't like what I saw, but after actually going back and playing much more of it, I admit that I was mistaken regarding this game and that it is actually a lot of fun. But I want to explain different elements of this so that those of you that didn't want to give it a chance, maybe this will change your mind about it, especially since it's in Game Pass. And if you are a Star Wars fan, one that's been around for years, I can tell you that this is the Star Wars game that you've been looking for. So like I stated previously, this game did release about a year and a half ago. It released on Windows, PS5, and Xbox Series consoles August 30th, 2024, and it actually released for the Nintendo Switch 2 on September 4th of this past year in 2025. And this game's premise is, of course, something along the lines of what Amy Hennig from Naughty Dog fame was trying to sell Electronic Arts on. And, of course, no big surprise, EA was like, oh, we're not interested. Again, with EA, if you know anything about EA, you know that for every one good decision they make 9 bad ones. And deciding not to proceed with a game like this was definitely a foolish move on their part. But, of course, Ubisoft put this game together. And I do have to give credit to Massive, the studio that belongs to Ubisoft. They did a phenomenal job with this game because it definitely feels like it belongs in the Star Wars universe. It feels authentic to the original trilogy, without a doubt. The main protagonist in the story's name is Kay Vess, and they show you through flashbacks everything that she's been through, but they don't dump it on you all at once. Rather, it's done gradually, and it's done very thoughtfully by the developers, because they want you to get an idea of who she is, both from her flashbacks, but also very much from what she's going through in the present. But they give you flashbacks to show how she's evolved as a thief, how she's learned to survive, and why she doesn't necessarily trust people from her past that you think she normally would. She also is hesitant around some characters that are new, but not so hesitant around others. But it's through these flashbacks that you understand her decision-making process and the experiences she's had that's helped to shape the hero that she becomes. One of the best things that Star Wars Outlaws does is the stealth sections. Now, I know that Kay's takedowns of enemies got a lot of flack from people because they said it's too simplified. How could a small woman like this take down a full-size man like a stormtrooper? And you have to understand that Star Wars has always had ridiculous takedowns. You look at Han Solo grabbing a stormtrooper by the arm and doing a Steven Seagal takedown, and the stormtrooper doesn't get up. He's completely out of the fight. We all know that Aikido shit doesn't work. Okay, so when you actually go through and play this, you see that them keeping it simplified, it makes the game fun and enjoyable without making it too much of a grind or too tedious. One part that did catch me off guard was, of course, picking locks, basically. You use a data spike, but it's basically a rhythm game, so if you're good at rhythm games, that portion shouldn't give you too much trouble, and you will enjoy it because it not only allows you to open doors, but you can get into certain containers. Now, the whole purpose behind gathering your money and finding resources and all of that is you're upgrading your blaster, you're upgrading your speeder bike, and you're upgrading your ship. And the ability to change the focus of your blaster, like slower, more powerful blasts, or quicker, weaker blasts, is a nice touch because you're basically like, okay, are there going to be tons of armored enemies that I need to hit harder? Or is it just going to be a whole bunch of weaker enemies that don't really have armor that I need to take down quickly? They also have an ion setting on your blaster, which I thought was pretty cool because those enemies with shields, it allows you to hit them a couple times and their shields have to reset themselves. One of the most underrated parts of Star Wars Outlaws is all the mini-games that you find throughout the game. Now, one of the mini-games, of course, is when Kay Vess and her little sidekick called Nix are sharing a meal together, and of course, it's basically a quick time event if you want to think about it like that. But it's interesting because it's not boring, and it shows the dynamic between them, and it adds to the bond that you see these two have throughout the story. Now, I don't want to go into spoilers about Nix. Yes, Nix survives until the end, but Nix does get in a little bit of trouble. Not due to him, but there are characters in the story that kind of, he's in trouble because of them, but he doesn't die and he doesn't get seriously hurt. So I'm not going into spoilers about that, but Nix is an important part of her life. And so that little eating dynamic is cool because it shows you them trying to relax. Now, the sabacc game, which is basically like poker, also uses Nix. He can kind of spy on the other player's cards, and it helps you to give a good idea whether you need to change out your cards for other cards or keep the ones that you have. It's a nice dynamic, and I really enjoyed the sabacc games. I would have to say, surprisingly, it's one of my favorite mini games, if not the favorite minigame I have for Star Wars Outlaws, just because it allows you to earn money, sure, but it is legitimately a lot of fun once you understand the rules. Also, there is a special sabacc player who was in the Star Wars trilogy, the original trilogy, that does make a cameo here. It's really cool, but I'm not going to spoil it for you. I'm going to save that for a surprise. But when you see him, it's definitely going to make you smile. Now, one of the biggest elements of this game that I think is so well done is the underworld, the criminal organizations that you have to work for. They're essentially the ones that give you jobs, that help you to earn money. And yeah, you can make money from looting containers and stuff, but you really want to have these cartels on your side, at least one of them, because as you progress, being able to buy some of the components you need for speeder upgrades, blaster upgrades, etc., and certain costumes that you can acquire, being able to buy them at a discount is really, it's something that you really want to be able to do. And the way you earn that favor, of course, is by doing jobs for these cartels. But if you do jobs for one, a lot of times you antagonize another, and while you're in good graces with one cartel, you're going to be in bad graces with another, and eventually they're going to send hit squads after you that chase you on speeder bikes across these different worlds. While working for these cartels does offer a number of benefits, it doesn't really affect the main campaign, and I guess that's smart from a story writing perspective, because you don't want it to interfere as much. Now, some people, I guess, would argue that, hey, you know what, if I work for this cartel, I wanted to change how the storyline progresses, and that's fine, but for simplicity purposes, especially since the storyline is not ultimately about these cartels, they're kind of like side players or secondary focuses, if you want to call it that. The main storyline is about this particular heist that involves a bad guy, and he has his own criminal organization that you can't work for, so keeping it where the main campaign is essentially insulated from the decisions you make with these cartels, that actually makes a lot of sense. Now, my biggest gripe about the main protagonist is that he feels kind of weak, and it doesn't feel like you're in any real danger as far as fighting against his particular group or against him. It basically feels like he doesn't have any teeth as far as really going after the heroine, that's the female version of a hero, just so you know. It feels like he doesn't have any meaningful impact whenever he's trying to go after the heroine, the female hero of the story. I should probably just say hero because I don't want YouTube to flag my video. It feels like he doesn't have any real power because, like I said, it feels like she's not really in danger. And so this aspect of the story was one that I felt was kind of weak, especially since I'm a writer myself. It just feels like it was lacking in that regard. Now, another thing that I felt was a little lacking, and I know you're probably going to give me shit for this, but something that I felt was lacking were the space battles. Now, yes, there's space battles, and there's different objectives and different missions that you're trying to tackle in space. Oh my god, and don't come after me with pitchforks and torches when I say this. Starfield actually did space battles better than Star Wars Outlaws. Now, I know there's a lot of Star Wars games out there from past generations. Star Wars Battlefront Part 2 that EA put out did space battles tremendously well, but I feel like current games, Starfield actually did space battles better than Star Wars Outlaws, and for a lot of people that's going to be a big issue, but to be fair, most of the action happens planet-side, so it's not as big of an issue as you would think. So, the thing you got to ask yourself is, okay, this game has some good things to it and some bad things. What are the biggest positives about this game? And I would have to say, when Kay is on foot, the action, especially the gunplay, is pretty damn solid, and the stealth sections are solid. Now, I obviously prefer gunfighting, especially when Kay has kind of a Red Dead or Deadeye ability to tag multiple opponents and take them out with one quick blast for each opponent. And you unlock that ability and you get to where you can upgrade it, which is great, especially whenever you're surrounded by tons of stormtroopers. That's its greatest strength, I think, is the on-foot action. Of course, there's platforming too, but the gunfighting is the real star of this game, and it does it so well. Something that did bother me about this game, though, is that they purposely uglified Kay Vess. Now, her voice actor is undeniably attractive, and it just makes no sense why they didn't make Kay Vess look like her voice actor. You look at the actor for Cal Kestis, you look at Sarah Judah, the Jedi Master who worked with Cal Kestis, they both look like their voice actors. So why would they not do that for Kay Vess? That kind of feels like a Ubisoft decision, but we've seen them do stupid shit like that in the past. Outside of that, though, Star Wars Outlaws is a very solid game. It embraces the Star Wars lore and feels like it genuinely belongs in the Star Wars original trilogy. And for a Star Wars game, that's exactly where you want it. You want it to feel like it belongs in Star Wars. So, final verdict, definitely a must-play for Star Wars fans. But what are your thoughts about Star Wars Outlaws? Have you checked it out yet? Or is it a game that you wanted to check out, but you just never got around to it? Or did you listen to all that negative feedback that it got and you said, you know what, I'm just going to pass? Let me know in the comment section below. Hit that like button if you did enjoy this video, and be sure to share it with others who do like video game reviews and video game-based content. I greatly appreciate it. Anyway, that's it for this review video. Thank you so much for watching. If you're not subscribed to my channel, make sure you do so. This is SSG, aka Sergeant Sentinel. Take it easy, gamers.